All right, Mike Watkins from HurricaneAnalytics.com and also HurricaneTrack.com with the Saturday update on Isaias. Currently, the winds are at 65 miles per hour. The central pressure has not really changed much, around 990 millibars, which is what we saw earlier. But when you look at the satellite imagery, and you can see it right here, it doesn't look particularly well organized. In fact, what we had yesterday was a round shape. Now it's kind of spread out. And I'll show you why I think that's happening here in a second. But right now, the most important thing that's going on, and I think everyone kind of understands that the storm is probably weakening, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a tropical storm at this point, but certainly a downgrade could come if it doesn't get reorganized soon. Notice that yesterday, and I talked some about arc clouds shooting out. I don't think it was, I don't remember if it was here or on Twitter, but there's been a structural change somehow in the low levels, and those arc clouds aren't shooting out as much anymore, and what we're seeing now is more of a traditional convective banding kind of combined with the arc cloud idea. So these are not completely wrapping back into the center like you'd want if you wanted to have an intensifying tropical storm or hurricane, but it's not as completely broken away from the storm as we saw yesterday as well too. So that suggests that circulation is fairly, it's fairly intact. It's been going over Andros Island here all morning and early afternoon, and the center has emerged out into this swirl of exposed low-level clouds. There has not been a redevelopment of deep convection over the top. Most of it's still way out here to the right. That's a good thing, but the concern that I have is people are going to say, oh, there's no threat and we're not going to be too worried about this thing. Because we've already had bands of tropical storm force winds pop into Miami-Dade and Broward County over the last maybe 15 or 20 minutes or so. And as these things continue to spin in from the storm, they're going to get stronger as long as the storm continues to get closer to us. And I'm going to go through the mapping in a second. But also notice what's happening here in the low levels. You've got a pretty strong input in the very low clouds here, another here. You've got a stream of moisture still coming up and into the storm here. And then you can see the clouds rotating around this way. So it's not like the circulation center is a goner. It's just at this point it looks like it's a broader circulation around here than inside that broader circulation we have this low-level center. So the two things to watch now, and I'll get into the mid-level dry air in a second, is one, this is extremely warm water out here, 30 degrees Celsius in the Florida Straits. That's plenty of fuel for the storm if it can get organized. And then secondly, we're right in the middle of the convective minimum in the tropics. And what that essentially means is the difference between the cloud temperatures in the upper levels and the temperatures at the surface are least right now. So as we get into the evening hours and radiative cooling kicks in and the sun goes down and the clouds get colder at night, that creates more instability in the tropical atmosphere. So this is going to be moving into the Gulf Stream, very warm water at the convective maximum tonight when, essentially when the sun goes down into the overnight hours. So those two things give this storm plenty of fuel if structurally it can survive and intensify. Now, even if it doesn't, it's still going to produce strong bands and tropical storm force winds, and it certainly could cause problems for at least peninsular Florida. But the other thing, and this is what I think is happening to the storm as we look at it in the mid-levels. This is the mid-level water vapor imagery from University of Wisconsin. High detailed the GOES 16 imager. I think it shows up here. I think you'll be able to see it. But notice what's happening here in the middle. That's not a great color to pick there. Notice what's happening. You can see these little waves emanating from the storm and going from east to west. That looks like some pretty strong mid-level shear. And so what could be happening is that this is moving super fast up here. The storm is not moving nearly that fast in the low levels. So what we're seeing is a decoupling of the stronger of the low level center from the upper to mid to upper level winds. And in this case, this is kind of undercutting and cutting in between the storm at the surface and the outflow at the upper levels. Now, if that continues, then we do, strengthening may not be in the cards over the next 12 to 24 hours. But if there's a couple signs here. Notice we're getting some pop-up, thunderstorms out here that were kind of eroding this dry air a little bit. We're getting a little bit more, of the moisture starting to get through here. So if that continues to happen and it's able to kind of break down and create some instability out in front of the storm, and then we have lift happening again in the atmosphere, and let me try a different color because maybe that'll make it easier. Yeah, it's going to make it easier to read. So we're seeing some bubbles here. Now we still got this kind of emanating mid-level, forcing going on. But if it can overcome that and generate some moisture here in the mid-levels or so, then we've got some instability. The storm has an opportunity to strengthen. But the other thing that's happened here is, notice yesterday we had kind of a shape like this over the storm going into this trough back here. Now it's really stretched out. We've got a very high amplitude kind of outflow pattern here. Part of it's getting pulled into, just being pulled this way. Part of that outflow is being pulled back behind the storm. So that's a disruption in the structure from yesterday as well. So between those two things, the dry air and this kind of stretched out appearance in the mid-levels, those would be arguments against significant strengthening. But again, warm water, convective maximum coming up, and we've already observed some pretty strong winds in these kind of initial bands that are pushing in. All of that says the opportunity there is for strengthening. Again, kind of mixed signals we're getting from the storm. Now, of course, where's it going to go? And first, I just want to, again, show this animation of the storm and all the different model tracks up till this time, and kind of show you the trend here. There it goes, right there. And in this case, the redder, and it starts actually to go to orange a little bit. That tells us that's a stronger estimate, and the blue is on the weaker side. Notice what we've been seeing so far from the storm, and what we're seeing here today. The red, stronger tracks were further east and north. And these blue, weaker tracks that were of tropical storm intensity, for the most part, are on the left side of the storm. And that's because the stronger a storm is, the further up in the atmosphere you have to look to see where the steering currents are. The models that had it as a stronger storm had it turning a little bit sooner. Well, if it is weakening and it is around, if it's coming down perhaps to tropical storm strength, although there is some, again, the Hurricane Center is forecasting that it has an opportunity to intensify before it may reach the South Florida or Florida Peninsula or come real close tonight. These weaker tracks might indicate that the storm might move a little bit further west than if it were stronger. So that's what we're seeing also from the models now. So if I go, this is the model guidance, oh, not there, from, let me clear that up too. The map will render in a second, from 8 a.m. And the new guidance hasn't quite come in yet, so I don't have it, the map, but this is some of the more reliable models and consensus. Well, actually, that's everything. That would be your spaghetti output that you'd see like on TV that they'd show you. Remember last night I said that I thought that if the storm were to track south of Bimini, then we might be looking at a further west and a landfall situation. And then if it made it north, oh, my notepad just almost fell over. There we go. If it made it north of Bimini, then it might be able to turn before it reaches land, and then that would be more of a concern for folks up north. This is the 8 a.m. position estimate. Since then, the center has essentially moved right over Andros, and it's out in this vicinity here. It's about right there. It hasn't really moved that way, but there. So, and this is the Canadian model from earlier today. So this plus the shallow, I mean, this is an old model. I wouldn't even look at that guidance. So the only model that had it in this general position, which let me make it clearer, it's about right here now. About the only model that really had that was the Canadian. So not that it's a great model, but the trend is to the left of all of these other forecast tracks. Then, and I don't have it here, but the GFS that just came in within the last hour and a half or so also shows a much further west track than it was showing before, and kind of brings the center in up here overnight and into tomorrow. And the European model, it's hard to tell because the output is only 24 hours, has it still sitting out here at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, and then maybe moving in. I can't really tell because there's 24 hours in between these 2 points. But again, very close. So the models have shifted back to the west again. So if this has an opportunity to intensify a little bit, then that could bring problems for more of the Florida East Coast. Now, even in this case where the Canadian model has it going south of Bimini, it still has it coming in, around Boca Raton, and certainly up here and places further north, we have a hurricane warning in place. There's a hurricane watch in place to the south of that. But that's why, because any little wobble again to the left, or if it continues to move to the left of what the anticipated forecast track is going to be, then it's possible we'd experience tropical storm or hurricane force winds here. So we're going to be, certainly I'm going to be watching that, and you can watch on the Twitter or I'll be updating on the Twitter as we go in through the evening. If something significant happens, I'll bring out another update. But the point is, I think the models have kind of overestimated the strength of the storm. This interaction with Andros in the Bahamas has disrupted it. There's some strong winds in the mid-levels that are kind of shearing it, and there's a lot of dry air out in front of it. So that all says, weakening. But there's warm water out here, and there's we're getting into the convective maximum time as we get into the evening hours. So these are the trade-offs that we have. So certainly get the information from the National Hurricane Center and stay up to date with what they're providing. We'll have another forecast from them in about an hour and a half or so. But in the interim, when I look at this, I still see something to watch very carefully. It's certainly not going to be a fun night in South Florida. If the center comes in, that's better for our friends up north, because that means weakening as it's over land. If it stays out over water, it's not necessarily expected to get significantly stronger before it passes near potentially North Carolina and the U.S. East Coast. But it would be better for them if it came in here. And the signs are it's going to be really close. So by about 8 p.m. tonight, and then moving into the overnight hours, the storm should be pretty close in this general vicinity here. That means that we are going to continue to get stronger bands, that if convection fires up, the more upward motion means more of the energy is going to be translated back down through those bands to the surface, and then people are going to have a rough night, and we might have, at the very least, lose power. And also there's a potential for about 1 to 3 feet of surge from Jupiter Inlet down through Miami, even if the storm doesn't come in, because it's going to be pushing water again toward the coast as it sits out here. So again, just an interesting night ahead, certainly from a meteorological perspective, but as a resident and somebody who's watching this, and especially if you're down here with us, down here in South Florida, keep an eye on this. This thing is not over, even if people are telling you that that's the case. We still have what could be a hurricane, and certainly a strong tropical storm at the very least, right off our coast, and it's going to come really close tonight to make the landfall. So again, if there are any updates that are significant overnight or tonight, I'll post another update. Otherwise, pay attention to the Hurricane Center and just stay safe. Thanks again for watching.